as things become more social media based, the TV guys at WCVB want to see what tactics work and what they can use to almost regrow journalism, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. So, do you mind if I record this interview?
Oh, please, by all means.
Sounds good. Just to preface this, a lot of my questions are very general. I know every player, every situation, every video you make, vastly different depending on a situation, but just try your best to answer it in like general terms, and if not, feel free to bring up specific instances.
What I can tell you is if I get a little long-winded, just let me know. I am very verbose. I provide a lot of detail.
I'd rather that, to be honest. I mean, I do have a lot of questions here, so if time does get out of hand and you have to go, don't worry about it.
I don't foresee that being an issue on my end.
Sounds good. So, should I jump right into it?
Go for it. I'm ready, man.
All right. So, right now, I would say, I think you'd agree on this. I believe I saw a video of yours that prefaced this. But right now, TikTok's basically your biggest platform. How did you end up on TikTok?
Oh, what a funny story. So the way I ended up on TikTok, I was in the military, and I was notified and made aware that people were catfishing women all over the world using my pictures and my name, image, and likeness, essentially. So think of dating apps. They were using my photos and my likeness online. Now, I had no social media at the time. I didn't exist on social media. What I had was a Facebook from 2014 that had been just the hackers from Africa or whatever. They had downloaded all of my pictures, and so they were using them to defraud women all over the world. And I have a top secret security clearance. I work for the NSA. I'm a cyber guy. I am very, I guess, private in this regard. I didn't have much. I might have had 4 videos posted on YouTube, and it was just like my kids dancing around or a workout video. It was nothing of me talking. It was nothing sports-oriented or journalistic in any way. But I found out people were imitating me online and defrauding women all over the world. And one day at work, I kind of got in trouble. They called me in. They asked me about it. And I said, oh, well, I'm not doing anything. This isn't true. And they literally believed, because I was a cyber expert, they believed that maybe I was automating this. Maybe I was doing this. And I thought, that's absurd. So I wanted to prove my innocence, and I wanted to dig deeper into these people who pretend to be me online. And I found all the fake profiles, and I thought, which platform would enable me to tell my side of the story, and I could really prove that it's me. I am Rico, and my first name is Rico, and my last name is Rico. So I got on TikTok, and I was not RicoKnows at the time. I was just a regular guy, and I made a video or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 20, and I was trying to explain the situation to the world and just saying my part. I said, hey, people are catfishing all over the world using my pictures. And still to this day, you can find the fake profiles and you can find the pictures. But what happened was the victims came forward, the women who had fallen deeply in love with Rico, the fake Rico profiles, and they became my followers. And they were just grateful to meet the real person that was behind all these pictures that had been stolen. And I thought it was pretty neat. I had this little fan base of primarily women. And I segued towards, I'm a very talented person, so I started segueing towards like dance videos, giving life advice and relationship tips. And little by little, my following grew. And I say little by little, I'd say within 4 months, I had about 15,000 women following me. And not a video was made about sports. I might have posted 1,000 videos, and not one of them was about sports. And then in December of 2020, I want to say 2021, I posted a video about sports. I was looking at a Barstool Sports video on TikTok. I didn't agree with the topic. And I saw someone in the comments wrote something to the effect of, Coach Prime is going to fail as a coach because he's not an X's and O's coach. And I felt some type of way about that. Not to defend Coach Prime, but maybe to educate the masses on the fact that head coaches are CEOs of their programs. They're not necessarily always X's and O's coaches. They have coordinators for that. And they're a manager of resources, and they They need to be charismatic and be better at recruiting and managing personnel and all these other different things. So instead of writing all my different thoughts, I hit reply, but I recorded a video. And my video, I was rapid in my response. I did these little sports takes where I stop the video, start the video, start the video. It's my, I guess it's one of the iconic things about my videos is I deliver it in a assertive, rapid fashion. And I went to bed. And I woke up the next morning to 300,000 views. And I saw that I had 20,000 followers. And I thought, my goodness, what just happened last night? And what had happened was people started writing things like, this guy knows ball. People started writing to me directly. And instead of, like when you make a video about a topic, people will give you a response and their opinion on the topic. That means they don't value what you're saying. That means you've started a conversation with them, but they don't value your input. It's when they start writing to you and then they ask you, can you give me your take on this topic? And it's a different subject. That means they value your input. And so over time, over the next month or two, the people validated me as a journalist. They validated me as being authentic, detail-oriented, informed on every topic. And they just kept asking me questions, and they've never stopped. And now it's to the point where I don't have to watch the news. I've never watched ESPN, but I don't have to watch TV. I have people who tell me when something happens in my DMs, I mean, instantly, as soon as it happens, they tell me, and then I can go make a reply and give my take, and they value my take from my perspective because my point of view is now valued because I'm RicoKnows. Because they named me RicoKnows. I did not come up with the name RicoKnows. The followers actually put it in one of the videos in the comments section. They say, you need to change your name to RicoKnows because you know everything. And it's moments like that where you get validated from the following and you learn to grow and, I guess, adapt your channel and your perspective. I stopped making dance videos. I stopped doing thirst traps. I stopped interacting with the 99 percentile of women. I just focused on sports. And now I'm an entire platform where I provide information to gamblers. I do high school film reviews. It has segued to so many different avenues for me. And it enabled me to retire from the military. And now I do this full time.
Yeah, that's great. That's insane how that started. That was not what I expected at all. It's interesting to see how fast all that happened because you mentioned your first take being related to Coach Prime. Yep. Coach Prime hasn't been Coach Prime forever. Like, this is like relatively recent, and it all just seemed to happen so fast for you, right?
Well, for me, it doesn't feel that way. I want to make this very clear. I work maybe 18 to 20 hours a day. I literally put out 1,000 videos before I ever made $1. But I want to remind anyone out there in content creation is if you know you're good and you know you're better than others, do not quit. Just keep going. The wall is going to be broken down eventually. I just believed in myself. I know what I do. I know I have a talent. I have a gift. And I kept perfecting my craft and getting better at it. I still don't have an editor. I still don't have a graphic designer. I still have a very authentic feel to my videos because it's just me. It is very authentic. But I have perfected the art of CTA or call to arms. I have perfected the art of getting a hook in my video and getting people to reply. I can create clickbait if I needed to, but the reality is I can incite excitement or anger in a fan base with one video. It's a talent. It is content creation. You might look at a video or a story and see a headline and not think much of it, but I can take that headline and relate it to about 3 or 4 different sports history things, and that in itself becomes a mini documentary people want to watch, right? That's really what it comes down to, is the gift of storytelling, tying it into other things. I have a seamless ability to create analogies on the fly. When I do my live streams, I do a podcast during the season. I do one every single day. When I do my podcast every day, I go for 2 or 3 hours straight with no flubs, no messing up. nothing. I can talk about anyone and everything. And the only way you can do that is hours upon hours of preparation. So it didn't happen overnight. But yes, I did get to 100,000 followers faster than people could ever imagine. And it wasn't, let me say this, there wasn't one video over 1 million views for the longest time. Now, obviously, I have videos over 2 million and 1 million and all that. But when I first started, nothing was over 100,000. Like, everything was the same. It just, the median of views just kept growing, but no specific video went viral. And this is important because I want you to think of like the music industry. When somebody gets famous, they're a one-hit wonder. And they have that one hit song everybody knows them for. That's not how it worked for me. I put out so many videos, and they just gradually started getting more and more views.
Yeah, how did you know that was going to work?
I have an immense amount of self-belief and confidence. I really knew, like, there's times you make a video and I'll put 2-3 hours into the video, and I'll say, this one's gonna blow. This is it. This is a masterpiece. And then I'll post it, and crickets. I'll get 4,000 views, 5,000 views, and I'll be like, what in the world? This is the most amazing thing ever. I did the 2-part series on SMU death penalty. I was so proud of those videos, and no one watched them. And then there'll be a throwaway video where I just rant quickly, make it before I jump in the shower or something, and I get out the shower and it's at 20,000 views in 5 minutes. And I still have no control over the algorithm and how TikTok regulates and spreads out my videos, but I now know I can literally look at one of my significant other, her name is Kim. I look at Kim before I post a video, and I tell her, oh, this one's gonna blow. Like, I can already tell now when something's gonna go really big and when it's not. And it's, part of it is I don't depend on views for my revenue. So my business structure is no longer view driven. So I don't even make videos for views anymore. And that enables me to be authentic. And that's what's really cool, is I don't have to make clickbait and lie to you. I can just make videos, and if it doesn't go for any views, I'm okay. It's not the end of the world for me. That's the really unique part of me, is because the views are 5% of my income.
Yeah. So what creates up most of your income, just very quickly? Not that I need like a biggest.
No, that's okay. What creates most of my income is, it turns out I do a lot of studying. I do a lot of preparation for the seasons and sports, so I do a lot of analysis. And knowing the rosters, transfer portals, analysis, players, assessing talent, all these things contribute to my ability to predict the outcome of games. So I looked at that, and I started giving out predictions on TikTok last season, just saying what's going to happen in this game. Oh, I think this game so-and-so is going to win, so-and-so is going to lose, so-and-so is going to win. And when I did that, it turns out I'm a lot better than any what they call capper in the world, essentially. And I started analyzing games for gamblers. So now there are gamblers in the world. They pay me a membership fee on my Patreon or my YouTube, and that it's a monthly membership fee, and it's $25 a month. It's not much in the world of gambling. That's nothing. And I provide them with all the information I can about every single game for the entire month. And as soon as I did that, and I started getting, well over 1,000 people signing up, that turned my revenue into something monumental.
Okay. So you mentioned you do like heavy analysis. What do you analyze that creates this information that you give out?
For the most part, I want you to understand that I watch these players from their high school days, right? I start looking at huddle film when they're in high school. So I know the players very, very well. And when I say I know the players, I'm talking about 133 FBS level teams. So not just, or 134 now, shout out to Kennesaw State, but it's not just I look at the Power 5 teams or all the popular teams. No, I can tell you the 5 wide receivers on UMass right now, or, the depth chart at name a school. Like, I'm that guy. So because I know all of the players, I have a much better understanding of the matchups and how they're going to measure up. So what I can do is I can look at prop bets, individual players' prop bets, and I'll say, oh, no, he's going to rush for more than 30 yards against that defensive front. They run a 4-4, they run a 3-5 defense. There's no way, right? A 3-3-5 defense. There's no way they're going to hold him to less than 40 yards. He's done that 4 times in the last 2 years. Like, I have a real analytical mind. I can memorize a ton of things, and then I just know matchups. I am the son of a football coach. I did play football my entire youth and my entire high school days and stuff. I do understand football more than the average person or anyone really, and that's kind of my gift. And so when I start giving out predictions and saying what's going to happen, you know, in the gambling world, I give my picks against the spread, and that's taking into account however Vegas wants to handicap these things. And against the spread, I'm over 60% after 450 games, and more importantly, group of 5 games, Vegas has no idea about them, and I know about all those teams because I study those teams just as much as I would a Power 5 team or a Power 4 team. So that's what makes me unique, is I actually know every team in America.
Yeah, no, you mentioned like you could tell when like someone's going to run for more than 40 yards based on how one team defends. That's because you've grown up, you played football, you're a football mind in a way.
Sure.
How could, like, local journalists who maybe specialize in one sport, who aren't really too familiar, like, kind of craft their mind in a way to become more analytical?
Yeah, so what I would recommend is, when I was younger, I was a sports writer for a newspaper. I used to work for the Desert Sun, a 50,000 circulation newspaper. So I was a journalist at 18 years old without a degree. I got hired to do box scores. It was called an agate clerk. We did box scores in the newspaper back then. This was the year 2000. And I used to just do box scores, and I would take something called staff reports. Phone calls would come in, and they would call us, and they would say, you know, this volleyball match just ended. Well, I don't know the first thing about volleyball matches, but then I started to realize, well, when a particular team won the volleyball match, their players had more kills and digs. And I started thinking, oh, those are important. I need to learn the difference between those. And I started correlating a certain number of blocks, digs, and kills, and how that equates to a win. So when you start doing that in sports you don't know, you start studying. I studied box scores initially. And then I became a journalist or a beat writer, where I would go to the games, and I'm watching and observing these sporting events, and you just have to get a passion for them, and you learn about them. And some writers are better than others. They can tell you the story. But what's unique to me is I played football my whole life, I wrestled my whole life, and I ran track. So if you ask me to write a story about those 3 sports, I'm second to none, because I know all the terminology. I understand what's going on. I can remember, there's a really funny story. I was proofreading and cleaning up, editing a hockey box score. And in hockey, they have penalties in there when people get sent to the penalty box or whatever. I don't know the first thing about hockey. And one day my editor told me, cut out all the penalties out of the box score so we can make them fit, because we have to make them smaller. Now, we had to keep the box scores accurate because people used those back in the day. They used them for fantasy hockey. You didn't have websites. You went to the newspaper to get your results. So I cut out all the penalties, and somebody called the paper and said, hey, one of your box scores is incorrect. It's missing a player who scored a goal last night. And my editor was like, oh, there's no way. We have our best stat guy doing that stuff. He would never delete a player who scored a goal. And sure enough, I was deleting a guy. His name was Radic Bonk. That was his last name, Bonk. But I saw Bonk, and I thought that was a penalty in hockey, and I kept deleting it because I thought we were deleting all the penalties. So there was like hooking, high sticking, all this stuff, and I saw that, and I thought, oh yeah, that Bonk, that's an illegal move in hockey. I was ignorant. I didn't know. And you have to learn the sport if you want to be better at it. And that just comes with time, right? So I've been covering football from a journalistic perspective and an analytical perspective for at least 25 years. It's just that I'm now on TikTok that people go, oh, he's just a TikTok guy. Well, that's not true either. Obviously, I have other platforms. But it took a while to get once I started getting DMs from FBS level coaches and FCS level coaches and saying, yeah, Rico, you're really right about your analysis of our players or who we're recruiting, or, hey, Rico, I just got a message from somebody at UAB last week. They asked me, hey, can you tell us who are some hidden gems that could make it on our team at the defensive end position, some edge rushers? So I had to go through the transfer portal and find guys that I think would help them out. And I'm sure they have staffs that do this. But for some reason, I tend to be more accurate than your interns at your recruiting staff, or even some NFL draft. Obviously, some NFL draft scouts are incorrect because I don't give out draft grades. I give analysis on your draft, and I tend to hit pretty damn good on that as well.
Yeah. In the cases where you don't hit, do you chalk it up as if a misunderstanding, a lack of information, or is it usually something that's like a shift outside of your control?
Well, I fully understand that there are other variables that impact the desired end state, right? I have no control over what depth chart you go to. I have no control over who your coach is, or if your coach gets fired. Obviously, injuries. I don't know you personally, so I'm unaware of your living lifestyle or work ethic. But what I will tell everybody in this world of analyzing sports is when you miss, you have to understand you don't need to be 100% accurate to be relevant, and you don't need to be 100% accurate to know what you're talking about. People miss in every avenue of life. People miss everywhere, and just because you got something wrong doesn't mean you don't know anything, right? Ken Jennings is probably the greatest Jeopardy player in the history of that show. No one wants to go up against Ken Jennings. Yes, he missed questions. He's still a damn genius and still dominated the trivia world when he won Jeopardy however many episodes in a row he won. There are people who are great at something, and people will try to disregard you if you miss. And we need to remind everybody, you don't need to be 100% right to know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, no, that's true. I know you mentioned a little bit earlier that you've been basically in the sports world much longer than anyone who's just a surface level like TikTok fan, would know. So I assume that you go more into detail in like your podcast based on like a lot of your knowledge, or versus, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like a lot of your TikTok content seems to be like the eye test, film review, stuff like that. Is it much more in depth than like almost like a combination of like the history of your knowledge like on your podcast and YouTube like video?
Oh yeah, so I'll explain. There's different formats because of the length or duration that you get paid. Let me explain that. So if you're going to give a tidbit of information in an instant, you probably want to go the YouTube and you do a short reel, or you do I forget what they're called. It's just like a quick video of some sort. A short. It's a YouTube short. But if you want to give your answer on a topic and you want to get paid by TikTok, you have to talk for over a minute. But what we've learned is if you talk for over 5 minutes, it does not get distributed the same as the minute-long videos. So you want to talk for a minute, but if you're going to put anything on YouTube and gain traction, you need to do it in a much longer format. And you can't post the same video on TikTok that you do YouTube. It will not get the same amount of views. It will not get the same amount of traction. It will not get the same amount of engagement. And then, like, I don't use Instagram, but Instagram is 90 seconds. That's their hit number. So every app has a different duration of time you need to talk to be relevant on a topic. But what I've learned is my long format information will always be on YouTube. So for an example, this morning I talked about my top 10 corners in the NFL draft, and it's a 30-minute episode on YouTube. I can do that same video and that same topic, but I would do it in less than 3 minutes on TikTok.
Right.
Yeah, an abbreviated version of it, if you will.
Yeah, so you go much more detail, obviously.
On YouTube, yes. We treat YouTube kind of like documentaries.
Got it. Do you ever try and like implement like specific stats that you know into like the TikTok, like the way like, I don't know, like there's definitely creators who will be like, oh, like someone's better than this person because of this specific ranking.
Sure.
I feel more often than not to say this is what I saw, rather than pulling up stats.
Right. So at some point when you become respected and valued for your input and your assessment, you can then create your own metric, right? If we think about it, and if you study, like I talk about recruiting, if you went to recruiting websites, people trust their star metric or NIL's rating metric. So I created my own score metric for the transfer portal. I call it an impact score. It's sitting on an Excel spreadsheet on my desktop. And I gave out everybody impact scores last offseason. and then we checked to see how relevant or how accurate my impact scores were, and they were extremely accurate. I was able to identify what teams would improve the most from the transfer portal instead of identifying who were the best players that got signed. I don't care about who signed the best players. I care who's going to improve the most from this offseason. And I was able to project, like Texas State, they won 8 games. It's a school record. And I saw that coming after only winning 3 games the year before. They were in my top 10. So New Mexico State in my top 10. Colorado, obviously, in my top 10. They improved their win total by 400%. So when you can start predicting the growth of these teams and you have your own metric and you have enough data to prove its validity and its accuracy, then you kind of can win people over. But some of these websites just they just throw out random stats that don't mean anything to me. I don't care. Like, when did PFF become relevant? Right? When did PFF become the gold standard? Well, when NFL scouts started quoting it, when people started saying this PFF rating is this and that and the other, then that gave it its validity. Well, there's no different. You can make a metric on anything as long as somebody believes in it and quotes it. Then we're good, right? So it's a long process.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen clips of you calling out specifically 24/7 on how
Sure.
Some of their rankings are group players together or stuff like that.
Well, the problem they do is if you sort your output at 24/7 Sports, you can literally see that it all depends on what school you commit to. The particular players that commit to a school in that position group are all ranked the same. In other words, a recruit going to this school is this type of player, and it's just there's pockets. So everybody who went to Boston College that's in the secondary is all rated the same. That means a Boston College secondary player is this echelon of player according to 24/7 Sports. It's very frustrating that people can't see it in clear daylight, that it's not mainstream media. A lot of people don't care either. You know, that those websites are recruiting for dummies, if you will, and they love to just go click on something that's easy, digestible, and it's in front of them, you know, and it looks pretty. It's got a GUI, so they like it.
Yeah. When it comes to making these rankings, or even just when you're watching a film review and gonna say whether you like it or not, what are some of the little things you look for in players from a general standpoint?
So a couple things I look for. It obviously depends on the position group, but some of the things I look for are I anticipate whether or not that end result of the play could be reduplicated against better competition. I'll give you an example. When I look at defensive back film, a lot of defensive backs want to show you all their interceptions. But at the high school ranks, your interception could be because you were playing against a substandard quarterback. Your interception could be because the quarterback, overthrew the ball or somebody was sacking him and he threw it up for grabs or whatever. Like, you can get a lot of junk plays and a lot of junk stats, and it's not impressive at all. And the kids don't understand this. I'm more interested in how you read the offense. How do you backpedal? How do you get out of your backpedal? Do you drive back to the quarterback? Do you have good hips? Do you know what that is? Do you meet the ball at the highest point? Just a lot of different aspects. And then this is from being a coach. I've been a coach before. I coached for 3 or 4 years, and I think it was 4 years. My father coached for 10. And in that time, I was able to understand every position group with the exception of kickers and punters. People always give me a hard time about it. I don't have any constructive criticism for kickers and punters. I know nothing about it. But every other position group, I can intelligently talk about the fundamentals of what those players should be doing and how they should be doing it. One thing I will say is I'm calibrated to identify your speed. In other words, I can watch you and know just off your stride alone and the amount of time it takes you to cover 10, 20, 30, 40 yards. I know what your 40 is just by looking. So you can write you run a 4.4, but when I watch the film, I'll go, oh, that's a 4.6 guy. And that's just the calibration of your playing speed and the way I look at it. So I see that a lot too. Another example would be, do you make progression reads at the quarterback position? Do you look at one target and then go to a different target because that first one wasn't open? Progression reads is an advanced thing among quarterbacks. Can you throw to the outside hash or outside of the opposite hash? It's an indication of arm strength. If I look at it, I look at the arc of the ball, the touch pass. Can you do layered throws? Can you throw over a linebacker but in front of a secondary player? There's a lot of things involved there. In defensive linemen, I look for 2 gap responsibilities, meaning you could be on the edge, force the guy to cut it back inside because you maintain your outside shoulder. And then once he cuts it back inside, can you get across that tight end or tackle's face and actually make the tackle? It's called 2 gapping. It's an advanced technique amongst defensive linemen. You just have to understand what the concept is, and it's not always as clear on tape as, oh, I watched a good play. Oh, look at that hit. Look at that long run. I don't care about an 80-yard run when nobody chasing you is playing on Saturday.
Yeah, no. And you're saying that, like, you could tell these little things. I assume that developed over time, where it's like you just watched so much that it's like that's like what it is. Like this is more impressive than that because of this like kind of situation.
100%.
Yeah. So that really can't be converted to any stats, can it?
So I can tell you this, that when I do my high school film reviews, at the conclusion of my video, I will say about a particular player, I will say, you are of this caliber, whether it be FBS, FCS, Division II, Division III, NAIA, JUCO, or have a nice life, right? And when I do those assessments and I give that prediction of what caliber of player you are, I actually annotate it on my log. I have a color coding system on my database, and I will go back around and double check where did they sign. If I said he was an FBS caliber player, was he an FBS caliber player? I've had many players come back to me and go, you were right about my assessment. No coaches are offering me at this level. This is where I'm going. And because every kid, for the most part, most of these kids all believe they're Division I, and they don't understand that Division I is FBS and FCS, right? There's 134 FBS teams, but there's 128 FCS teams. So there's no shame in going FCS. That's still Division I football. They just don't understand that because it's not on TV, because some of their friends are peer pressuring them into thinking they should play elsewhere. But what I track with my stats is how accurate was I in my assessment of the individual player.
Yeah, and then what you do with that, you just want to put them in a situation where they can play. You know? Like it's like, yeah, they might still get an offer from like an FBS team, but are they really going to play there? You know.
Well, let's be real. As a true freshman, you probably shouldn't be playing anywhere. You should be in a developmental phase or on the bench and redshirting. It's just not realistic to go somewhere where you're going to start right away. At least not in 90% of the people, like the players I'm helping, right? You're not a 5-star kid. Now, I have done 5-star reviews and 4-star reviews, and even those schools, I mean, if you're going to a Power 5 school or Power 4 school, they should have 3 or 4 guys of your equivalency on the depth chart. So I never really worry about are they going to play this year, but I do try to project what they're going to develop into. I also take into consideration, do they want to leave home? I ask them these questions in the DMs. Hey, what are you bound by proximity? What scheme do you want to play in? You know, I had a young man, he's asking me to find him an offer. And this is like a follow-up thing I've been doing lately, where I will help these young men find an offer. I will do it after the video. It's free of charge. At least for now, it's free of charge. And I start reaching out to coaches on Twitter. And I was talking to a coach just yesterday, and he said, Rico, man, this guy's video is great. This tape's great. But it says he's a wide receiver, a corner, and a tight end. What does he want to play at the next level? And I said, well, where do you think you can use him? He goes, nah, he's got to tell me where he wants to play, man. He can only play at one spot. And that's the hardest thing is a lot of these kids are tweeners. They're not sure what position they play. They're not sure where they project, and I like to help them with that. But the assessment, keeping track of the stats, I don't keep track of how many players I get offers for. I can just tell you that every single time a player gets an offer, because of something I did, whether it was a video I posted or I reached out to a coach, the feeling is still the same as the very first time it happened for me. It's such an amazing feeling. I can only tell you that job satisfaction for the first time in my life it's just indescribable, and I'm a man of many words.
Yeah, no, that's great that your content is also giving back to the public, you know.
To some extent, I'm glad to help.
Yeah. So when it also comes to public, I'm going to do a bit of a shift here.
Mm-hmm.
What makes your content stand out to public audiences is something they must know. Like outside of the players you're helping, like, what does your everyday watcher gain from your content?
So first and foremost, how do you get them attracted to the light, right? You have to be consistent with a couple of things. Number one, my profile pic is just my logo, and it simply says RicoKnows. So you have to come up with a brand. You have to brand yourself. I created the phrase RicoKnows, or the term or the name, obviously based upon recommendations from the followers. But there's something else I created, and I started from scratch, and this is very hard to do. And that is, I created hashtag RicoKnows. And if you go to TikTok, hashtag RicoKnows has 100 million views today. Over 100 million, easy. And it started with nothing. So when I would hashtag my videos, people like to hashtag their videos with things like FYP or For You page. They'll hashtag it some really popular tag right now. They'll hashtag it Taylor Swift. And hopefully that video will get sent to all the fans of that particular hashtag. I never did that. I always made it RicoKnows, RicoKnows, RicoKnows. And the whole point was, I knew one day people were going to go to the internet and search on a particular topic and then hit space and type hashtag RicoKnows. And now you can do that with any sports topic in the world. It doesn't matter what it is. You can be like, what does Rico think of Michael Jordan? You can type in Michael Jordan and hashtag RicoKnows, and every video I've ever made about Michael Jordan will come up. And because I put the hashtag RicoKnows in it, it made it sortable and it made it easier to find. And it's now my calling tag. The other thing I did to make people watch my videos that made me stand out among everybody else is I created a motto. And that was kind of ingenious, and it happened over time. It didn't happen overnight. Trust me, there are like 200 videos where I keep getting it wrong. And I can't say it right, but every single one of my videos now, they all end the same. Your friends don't know, but Rico knows. And that phrasing has been repeated to me a million times over. It's been so cool. I've been in public, and I've had people yell out across the store, across the restaurant. Somebody just yell out, Rico knows, right? They'll yell out, your friends don't know, but Rico knows. And sometimes they'll mess it up. I'll never correct them. They don't say it right. They'll say, your friends don't know, but you not know. Rico knows. Rico don't know. Something they don't know what they're saying. They're trying to get it right. I remember I got on a plane. I was flying to California, and there was a gentleman, the very first seat in the plane, in first class. This gentleman daps me up, and he says, your friends don't know, but Rico knows. And as soon as he said it, my significant other, she was walking in front of me on the plane. She turned around and looked at me. I was like, man, that was so cool. And it happens to me in public all the time now. And now people look at me and say things like, want to see a dead body? Because that's what I say in my beef videos. Yep, that's another one. So it's pretty neat. And those are the things that really made me stand out, outside of the authenticity, the rapid delivery, the out-of-the-box perspective or responses that I do. I'm going to tell you one more thing, though. The unique thing about social media and about TikTok and YouTube and everything else is we don't have to wait for things to go to press. We don't have to wait for The Wire. We don't have to wait for the Associated Press. We don't have to wait for our time slot on TV. We can talk about it right now. And that's what makes Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, everything else so amazing, is we can give you a rapid response in the moment. I can't tell you what makes me great is that I'm always first. Some amazing news will happen, and I beat everybody to it because I'll have someone in my DMs telling me about it. I have a ton of sources, but more importantly, I have my phone ready. If anything happens in the world of sports, I'm the first one to give a sports take on it. You don't have to wait for SportsCenter to start the next morning. You don't have to wait for ESPN and First Take. You don't have to wait for a time slot to talk about something. You can get my response and my take right now. And that's the advantage I have over TV.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously TV doesn't have that luxury. So in a way, are there any ways that they can really model your work?
No. They can't reduplicate the work. What they can do, TV can do a number of things. Obviously, they have the ticker at the bottom of the screen. They can do breaking news like normal news. They do breaking. We interrupt this broadcast for this special breaking news. But the more viable option is, have you ever studied Colin Cowherd and The Volume? Are you familiar with The Volume?
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't studied it.
Okay. So The Volume is a company started by Colin Cowherd. It's worth over $100 million. And Colin Cowherd has employed sports journalists from TikTok, from other platforms. So he's employed about 13 different people. So now you have a news platform that has 13 or 14 very gifted news journalists, sports journalists, and they can give their rapid response and their takes. And when you look, their name next to it is The Volume. And that's probably the future of sports broadcasting, is enabling, you have to find talent in different places. And what people don't understand is there's so much, it's almost like music. There's so many amazing songs that never got released. There's so, due to bureaucracy, due to politics at the radio station or at the record company, right? There are so many groups that never made it. But could you imagine if they were given the autonomy to just put their music out and let the people speak and let the people choose who's relevant and let the people say who they want to hear from? But you're never given that opportunity because some executive out there thinks they know who you want to hear from. So the problem with TV is they have TV personalities that we didn't pick. They have TV personalities that the people did not pick. They're just on TV and we're stuck with them. And we have to trust those networks that these are the people that are probably the most well-versed to talk on these topics. But you never want to hear Stephen A. Smith talk about MMA. You never want to hear his take on MMA. It's absolutely disgusting how illiterate he is on MMA. But because he works at ESPN and they have a contract with UFC, Stephen A. Smith gives his takes on pay-per-view events, and he goes to them, and you're just looking like, why is this guy talking MMA right now? And the inverse is you can go to TikTok or YouTube and find a subject matter expert on these topics that are pleasant to your ear, that you enjoy listening to, and you can support those channels, and then the people, they speak for themselves, right? So during the football season, my channel gets 1 million views a day. 1 million views a day. That's the people speaking me into relevance. And that changed my life. So it doesn't matter if a TV network ever knows who I am or believes in me or gives me a chance. The people have given me that chance. And that's what makes TikTok, YouTube, and all social media so unique, is we're no longer bound by these executives who try to dictate who we should be listening to. And same thing with music. There's independent music artists everywhere now, and you can get their songs and their album, and you don't care what somebody at Interscope has to say about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think because journalism is in a way declining. Like Sports Illustrated just laid up all their workers.
Yep.
I have a stat up here that ESPN is down. They're down 25 million customers in the last 5 years, which is it's like this stuff obviously is going to be bad for the executives. They're going to realize this and see what they can do. And in a way, there are opportunities for them to hire who the people want, hire experts.
Well, they got Pat McAfee because of Pat McAfee's popularity on YouTube. To think that, and I used to watch Pat McAfee every single day on YouTube, and the average audience on YouTube was 30,000, okay? To think that you can take a 30,000 streaming show and flip that and start getting 400,000 because of the name brand, because of ESPN branding next to the name now, because you're in a studio and they produce the show, that increased it up to 400,000. Like, they can take somebody who's marginally successful at the lower echelon and put them on the right platform. The problem is they're going to grossly overpay for these a la carte shows, and the people that they try to replace the rest of their airtime with, they did something wrong. I'm going to say fundamentally wrong. They went and hired former athletes instead of journalists. The entire show was about journalism. The entire show was journalists. Every single person who was a host on SportsCenter was a journalist. Every host of every show they did was journalists. Pardon the Interruption, Around the Horn, Sunday, Sports Reporters, Behind the Lines. All this stuff was all journalism, and they got rid of it because they wanted to get debate culture. They wanted to get, and even when they got debate culture, initially they had journalists. And now it's got to be somebody famous arguing with somebody famous about something, and it's always got to be an ex-player now. And they've got an entire generation of people thinking the ex-players are the experts to talk on these topics, and they're not, because they're biased, because they're loyal to their friends or their former franchise. How many times do I have to turn on ESPN and see Michael Irvin advocating for the Cowboys? We get it. He's a Cowboy Hall of Famer. That is not the man I want to hear talk about the 49ers and the Chiefs game.
No, I agree with that. So, as it comes to marketing, what's not going to happen, obviously, but what's in best interest for journalism as an industry, or sports journalism, is to keep actual journalists and people who are professional. That's from a marketing stance. As it comes to the content itself, do you feel as if the data that is being presented could be presented in a certain way to become more engaging?
Well, I will say this. You need to just be more talented. Let me just make that very clear. When I was a sports writer, I was working at a newspaper, and I looked around and I realized this is a dead medium. Our senior sports writer lived in the same apartment complex as me. Meaning, if I do this job for the next 20 years, I'm going to drive a Ford Escort and live in the same apartment complex. Shout out to Ed Castro. But my point is I was looking around and I was like, this is a dead medium. This is not growing. So I joined the military. I put in over 20 years in the military, and I became a cyber expert because I knew that field was growing and it was ever changing. I did a whole video about this where I initially was military intelligence and an electronic engineer. And then one day I realized being an electronic engineer was not dynamic enough and not going to keep growing. So I got into cyber defense. And although that's an ever-growing field and it's not going to stop, it wasn't my passion. It was something I was good at, but it wasn't my passion. So when it was time for me to retire, while I got offered all these lucrative contracting jobs for the government, I politely declined everything and pursued what I'm passionate about. And that was this. And what I can tell you is if you can find those journalists that have the ability to be broadcasting and speak coherently without errors, without flubbing, without messing up, and just get in front of a camera and just start giving you their take. And they have enough knowledge on the topic that they can pull points of reference out of the sky. They can provide analogies on the go. And this is from me talking, and I've been an adult educator while in the Army. I was a first sergeant, but I was also an instructor. I did a lot of things where I talked and talked and talked. So when I get in front of this camera, it's very natural for me to teach on a topic, and I would teach it to the point where I feel like you can learn, like you can teach it now, right? And that's the coolest thing, is I can relate to every walk of life. I come from nothing. I come from the gutter, and I can talk about a topic with the average citizen all the way through to the lawyers and the doctors and get through the jargon. So if you can learn every lexicon of every echelon and then project it in front of the camera, you have quite the following. And I look at guys like Ryan Clark. I think he does it well. I'm not a fan, but he does it well. And there's others that are just educated, well-spoken, articulate, and assertive in their delivery. If you fumble around with your words, being just a writer isn't good enough. So that part of journalism is dead. Broadcast journalism with a mixture of, research and then presentation, like that's all has to combine to something productive, and then those are the people that are going to rise to the top. And that's kind of what separates me from everybody else. I remember looking at other sports pages when I started, and they all had more followers than me. And I thought, I'm better than every single one of these pages. Just wait till their fan base finds out about me. And I can remember this guy. His name is, I don't even want to tell you his name, but he does a podcast, and he was a coach, and he was a recruiter, and he used to work at Alabama and all this stuff. And he was threatened by me, and this was last year, probably around this time frame. I probably had 52,000 followers. And he got on his podcast, and he said, this guy, RicoKnows, never worked in this job a day in his life. He doesn't know anything. I don't know why anybody talks to him, this, that, or the other. And he said, I've been doing this job for 78,000 hours. And the whole time he was talking, all I thought to myself was, you are obsolete. You don't matter anymore, because I've decided to pursue this profession. And that is the mentality that Kanye had. That is the mentality that Jay-Z had. That's the mentality so many people have of, you see your greatness before it ever came to fruition. And I truly believe that. So there are going to be some people who don't like my presentation. There's going to be some people who don't like my self-belief and confidence. But if my self-confidence offends you, you're probably not built for this whole thing. And I think when you start finding journalists with this amount of presentation and this confidence, you're going to find successful people in this realm. Outside of that, if they're just mild, meek-mannered writers, anybody can be a vlogger. We've been doing vlogs and blogs for the last 30 years now. That's not unique. That's why it's a dead medium. That's why it doesn't matter. Everybody can be a writer. Find a message board and start writing, bro, and see if anybody – this is what I tell everybody. If you're a content creator and you want to become one, make a video and see if anybody gives a shit. Like, just start making your top 25 teams every week. Just start making your top 10 lists. Just start giving your sports take every single day. Just start pumping out videos and do this and see if anybody's rocking with you and see if anybody believes you, because that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. So when it comes to, I guess, probably more social media than TV, just from a general standpoint, where do you see the sports media landscape heading in the next decade? Like, from the social media perspective, I guess.
Yeah, in individual consumption, you're going to have the ability to choose where you want to obtain your information from, and no one's going to get to yell out and claim to be the worldwide leader in sports. There will be individual podcasts, just like you do right now. You individually go get what you want, a la carte. You find what you like, and that's where we're headed. We're on path. We're doing it now. So I'll be doing this for the next 20 years before I hang it up, and I can tell you that it's not going to change much in the regard. I mean, the technology might dictate how we deliver it and receive it, but the gist of it is going to be individuals giving you their opinion, and if you value their opinion, then you will subscribe to them and listen to them and prescribe them or to others and essentially anoint them your information, right? Your source. I want you to think of people with their favorite author. People go and buy their books and only their books. And they trust their input on a particular topic because they wrote the book. You don't go buy, nobody wants a book from 10 different authors on a topic like that. We don't need all that research. I just want this one guy talking to me about it intelligently. And that's what's going to happen with sports moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. Those are all the questions that I have written down for you. Is there anything else that you want to add, like, for me to throw in?
No, man, I just want people to understand that if you have a dream or a goal, right? They're two different things. A goal is something you work towards every single day. If you don't work towards it, it wasn't your goal. It's just a dream. It's just something you think about, right? Because the one constant is you either get better or worse every single day. You don't ever stay the same, right? If you wanted to lose weight or gain weight or, I don't know, save money, it's like every single day, what did you do to work towards that goal versus what didn't you do? So in this world of sports journalism and broadcasting and becoming relevant on this platform and this stage and this genre, I would tell anybody out there, like, attack it with a relentless passion and just never forget that it's never an accident. Like, I didn't get where I'm at by accident. I literally made 1,000 videos before I ever made $1. Ask yourself, how many videos have you made, or what have you done to pursue your profession, and how many reps did you put in before anybody paid attention? Right? I used to do podcasts for 30 views. 30 views. And I didn't care because I knew that I was telling the truth to 30 people, and I knew I was better, and I knew that one day those 30 were going to be 300, and then the next day I can remember when I was excited the first $1,000 I got. I can remember that, and now I make $1,000 a day. It's a different world. So just don't be relentless about your passion.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I really appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
If I have any extra questions, do I text you, call you? Do you care?
I don't care, man. I'm available. If I don't respond, please be patient. I will get there within 24 hours.
Yeah, no, I'm not in a rush. The draft is on a tight deadline. The actual article, I believe I still have a month for it.
All right. Well, don't procrastinate, man. Be great.
Yeah, I appreciate you for your time, and best of luck with the rest of your content.
Thank you, man. Have a blessed night. Take care. Remember, your friends don't know, but Rico knows. Peace.
Have a good night, man.
Thank you. And that's an interview for some school paper, some TV station. Shout out to you. Peace, y'all.